Welcome to my garden. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and today I am going to be taking you for the July garden tour here at my home gardens. Historically, July is the most colorful, the most vibrant time of the year, I feel, to be doing this garden tour. It's also the time where I feel like the flowers are just in their prime and looking just perfect. It's not the end of the summer where things start to get a little tired looking. It's just right here in the prime here in West Michigan. So my garden is a Zone 6A garden. As I mentioned, we are in West Michigan, and all of the plants that we have growing in this garden are hardy down to at least a Zone 5. Many of them obviously are even cooler, down to Zones 4 and Zone 3, but there are very few things in this garden that are Zone 7 and above. But that being said, there are a few surprises in my garden that have even surprised me that are Zone 7 and 8 and have successfully overwintered here in my garden. So let's go ahead, take a walk through the garden in this beautiful July evening and see what's blooming. Come walk through the garden with me. We're going to start off here in the heart of my garden. And what I consider the heart of the garden is my pollinator garden or my butterfly garden. So some back history on this particular garden space. Before this was a garden, this is the area in our yard where my children's play set was. So there's a lot of sand and such under this space, along with a lot of muck. Where we live, there's a lot of muck type soil, which is a very loose and light soil. So really a prime type of area to be growing perennials in. So when we created this garden, I don't know how old my daughter was, maybe 10, 8, something like that at the time. She said, let's create a butterfly garden. So that's exactly what we did. The plants in this space are really key toward the pollinators and the butterflies. So what are some of the plants that we have planted in this butterfly garden? We're going to start off with coneflower. So when we created this garden, I wanted to have just a ton of coneflower. So when we started off, this was various colors. Right now, it looks like mostly we're getting a couple different shades of pink and then some oranges. So over time, over the last 10 or so years, some of the plants have died off, others have seeded, and this is just what we have at this time. And I'm loving the fullness of this little corner of the bed that is just full of these beautiful coneflowers. We also have tall phlox in this garden, and this particular variety here hasn't started blooming yet, but one thing I am noticing is that it is starting to get a little bit of mildew. So I'm going to just let it flower, and when it's done flowering, I'm going to trim it back and see if we can clean the plant up a little bit from some of that mildew. It has been it's been dry, it's been hot, but it's also been wet, which sounds kind of conflicting. So we kind of go one extreme to the other. And when you have a lot of moisture, a lot of humidity, it's very humid here in Michigan, that is when you do start to notice some of that mildew develop on the plants. In this garden bed, we have it lined with the white sun patiens. For those of you who watch my videos and have watched it for years, you know that we always line this bed with the white sun patiens. And we do that because I love how the white just glows in the night. My Miss Molly butterfly bush is just starting to put on a few blooms. I love the color of Miss Molly, that beautiful deep magenta, and they're also so fragrant. One thing I have noticed this year is we must have some sort of a bug or worm in the garden because my butterfly bush is getting holes in it. So because this is a pollinator garden, I don't treat any of these plants because I don't want to harm pollinators. So we just kind of let nature do its thing, and if something happens like holes in the leaves, so be it. That's just what's going to happen because, like I said, I don't want to harm the butterflies that come and visit this space. We've got some Monarda blooming, beautiful Monarda. This is the Leading Lady Purple or Leading Lady Plum, and you can see the bees are just all over this. This is also known as a bee balm, and you can see very amply named with the bees just checking this out. My Spigilla Little Redhead is and has been blooming for probably about 3 or so weeks now. I love the Spigilla. It's kind of a not so known about plant. It's a native. It can be grown in sun or in shade. We have ours grown here in our full sun garden. And it's got really gorgeous red flowers with those yellow centers. and it's just a very unique and different flower form, and I love how it looks in the garden. Kind of a fun, whimsy type looking plant. Making our way down into the path of this butterfly garden, you'll notice on this entry we also have coneflower, and this particular space too, the pink is really the most prolific here at this point. There's a few oranges just starting to bloom, and there's also one that's kind of green with pink, which hasn't started blooming yet, but that's also very unique once that particular variety starts blooming. Some stachys, Humilio is the brand, is the variety. Beautiful purple flower spikes, and you can see too, it's another one that the pollinators are really enjoying. So as I'm out here in the garden, I'm trying to see if we've got the Japanese beetles, if they've arrived yet, and I'm not so sure. This looks like it could be a beetle hanging out, but I don't think it's a Japanese beetle. It doesn't have that iridescent sheen to it. So that's something to look for. If you have the iridescent sheen on your beetles, more than likely they're they're the Japanese beetles, which can be very destructive in the garden. My Viva Paullinia clematis has been blooming forever, and there's still a few blooms, that beautiful magenta blooms. And this is what clematis looks like when the petals fall off. And I think personally, this is kind of a unique look. Some people may want to trim or deadhead the clematis to get rid of these, but I think it's really kind of a pretty look. And they're gonna get nice and airy and kind of wispy as they continue to age. But it's so pretty, and that Viva Paullinia has really outperformed itself this year, and I've been very, very pleased. Also on this particular trellis, I have the diamond ball clematis. Beautiful double blooms, kind of a very, very light, soft, pale purple color, really big flowers, and that looks really nice, paired there with that Viva Paullinia. I had mentioned in the beginning of the video that there are a few plants that have surprised us. So if you look here, tucked in next to the butterfly bush, that is a calla lily. Now, we'll see if it blooms or not. This is not hardy here in Michigan, but this has been coming back for probably 7 years now. The foliage is really nice with that white speckle. So on occasion, I have seen yellow flowers, but it's been a few years since we've actually seen it flower up. We have bobo hydrangeas in this garden, and they will be blooming probably in another month or so, and they're just starting to set their buds. So this will be just an explosion of beautiful white blooms once bobo starts to flower. The sonic bloom weigela has flowered once, and you can see there's still a few flowers remaining. This is a rebloomer, so this will bloom 2, if not 3 times during the summer. And you can see it's put on a lot of new growth since its original blooms. And the secondary round of blooms is going to be coming from the new growth that this plant is putting out. We do trim back this weigela by about 1/3 every fall. That's because it's too big in the garden if I don't trim it back. This was planted several years ago, and we kind of knew how big it would get, but we just didn't realize how big it would get. And so instead of taking it out because it's too big for the location, we just make do by trimming it back so that it fits the space. We have some red lark delphinium blooming, and this is a beautiful delphinium. I've got some of these planted at the greenhouse gardens as well, and the color of this is just gorgeous. You can see how we have it planted in a tomato cage, and we do that way it kind of holds them up. Now, red lark really does have very sturdy stems and typically does not need to be caged. So I think the gardeners probably just put the cage on just to be safe, to be careful, because I'm going to be showing you some more delphiniums that definitely did need caging to help them from falling over. The Selenia yellow begonia, just a beautiful splash of yellow in this garden space, and I think it pairs so beautifully with that cobalt blue ceramic pot. And then you'll notice I got the blue bottles in the background too. I love adding those bright splashes of color into the garden. We've got some opening act phlox there, kind of about halfway through its bloom cycle. It's kind of starting to show a little bit of spent blooms. So once that's done blooming, we're going to trim it back and let some of the other flowers kind of take hold that are also growing in that space in the garden. You'll notice I have my new birdhouse up. We had an orange one in here to match the blue and the yellow, but after and over the years it just kind of rotted. So I did finally get a new one to put into this collection. That way it's a lot sturdier and more upright. So I love the birdhouses in the garden. As I mentioned, I love having little accents, little hard goods in the garden because I think they add so much character. Lupin, there's a few lupin still holding on. This is the blue and white or purple and white bicolor. Here's another one of those surprises, another calla lily. And this one, I'm seeing a bud or a bloom form. So this is another surprise plant that really shouldn't be overwintering here in my Michigan garden. Another thing that's surprising, and this isn't because it's not hardy, this is because the rabbits haven't gotten to it yet. Lilies are a favorite of rabbits. So somehow they must have found other things in the garden that were more appetizing to them, because I might actually get to see my lilies bloom this year. I've never seen them bloom because they always get chewed down. So this will be a welcome surprise to see what color they are. Some more lupin. I love lupin, one of the early bloomers in the garden. These are all kind of second round blooms. This one I believe is called Manhattan Lights. That burgundy or kind of rosy burgundy and yellow is just simply so stunning. Now I had mentioned that I had another delphinium that needed to be staked, and this one here is looking pretty sad. This is the blue light, and in all fairness, we had terrible wind and rainstorm last night. A lot of power outages, trees down and such. So these delphinium were doing really great in the tomato cage that we had for them, but they just could not hold up to the winds last night. The My Angel clematis is continuing to put on a show. Beautiful light lavender blooms. Just look at this thing. It is just absolutely covering this trellis. We also have a few pink mink who have made their way to the top. Beautiful proven winners clematis. A little bit smaller flower form, but I love that pink and that light purple planted together, or light blue. It really is a beautiful combination. Got some of the happy, I think the happy returns are part of the return series of daylilies. These are both reblooming daylilies. In the back there we've got a little planting or a border of more of the Sweet Romance lavender. That is a beautiful mini mauvette hydrangea, part of the smooth hydrangea family. It's a rebloomer, blooms off of the new growth, so very reliable year after year. Here we have some loosestrife. This is often found in swamps. This plant has memories to me. My grandfather gave it to me, and it's been in my garden ever since. A lot of people are going to say, Heidi, that's the most invasive plant out there. And you're not wrong. It can be, but in my garden it stays very well behaved and is a beautiful addition to the July garden. More cone flowers, and you can see here again how I planted a whole bunch of different colors. When I plant my daylilies, it's not just one. There's usually about 5 or 6 that all get planted in a grouping. So I get this really beautiful mixture of colors. Some clematis are blooming back there. You can see that's also a little nook in the garden that is a shady spot. So we had it jam-packed full of hostas, because at the time that was one of the places we could actually plant some hostas that they'd get enough shade. Saffron finch supertunias doing nice in this area. Got the limetta hydrangea, perfect size to tuck underneath a window. Under the deck here, we also again are utilizing our shady spaces to the best of our ability by loading this area up with a lot of different hostas. There's also some dicentra or bleeding heart in here, so it gives us a little bit of interest early on in the season. A clematis vine that actually takes a little bit of shade. This was an early bloomer. But look at those beautiful seed heads. Doesn't that add just some unique interest to the garden? Hosta Liberty, because someone's going to ask. Very vibrant with that nice yellow edges. It turns whiter the longer the season goes on. Alstroemeria Inca Ice. You've been waiting for this part of the tour. Those of you who have, you know you have. One of my favorite plants, and I almost feel like I can't even talk about it anymore because it's no longer on the market, which is really sad, but I am glad, and those of you who have this in your garden, I'm sure you are glad as well that when this was available, you were able to get it and get it planted. They're excellent cut flowers, blooming from June to the first frost. And you can see this was one plant starting off, and it's covering about 4 foot by 3 foot of space in the garden. And I'm okay with that. The circle garden is kind of cycling right now. The gardeners came and trimmed back all of the bloomerang dwarf lilacs, so they look a little scrappy right now. So they're starting to put on some new growth for blooming later on in the season. The Selenia yellow begonias planted next to the My Monet Wagilas, and you can see the shape of these are just a little wonky, and that's because the lilac was getting too big and kind of pushing them. So this is a plant too that we should come through and trim. The only problem is if we trim it now, we may sacrifice our blooms next spring. So that's something we have to decide if we're willing to sacrifice. Sometimes you have to, you know, your plant may not be looking great, and you have to sacrifice a season of blooms to get it just looking back on track again. But look at that foliage. Green and white foliage, and the edges of the leaves are all kissed in a beautiful blush color. And I think it looks really nice next to these red sun patiens. It kind of helps pull that pink out of the My Monet just a little bit. The Atlas roses were gorgeous, but they are now cycling, so we do need to come through and deadhead them. So we're going to get rid of all of these spent blooms, give them a light trim, and they'll be back in business blooming again in no time. Look at that. That My Monet, doesn't it just kind of shine? That pink just is really popping, especially, I don't know if it has something to do with tonight's lighting, but that My Monet is looking really very beautiful in the garden space tonight. So this space, we definitely repeated things. The dwarf lilacs, the Atlas roses, the My Monet. In the center, that is a limelight tree in standard form, which basically means it was trimmed in such a way that it has a trunk, so that will bloom later on this summer. And then the red and the yellow annuals, I think too, make this spot just really look stunning. And it will look even better once those lilacs start to refill out again. This little corner of the house has been a little bit of a, I guess it's been changing, in part because of this tree that's creating a lot of shade that never been here. So now it used to be very sunny. Now we have to think along the lines of what can we plant here that will handle maybe a little bit more shade, especially in the morning. So by noon this area gets full sun. So it does get plenty of sun, but we just had to kind of rethink things a little bit for this space. Here's some more clematis. Anytime I get a chance to show you clematis, I will. Jolly Good and Venosa violacea. So in this bed, we tucked a bunch of the sun-loving bleeding heart along with Nepeta, cat's pajamas. So they will just kind of fill in this space. We had a lot of coneflowers at one time, but the sun is just not enough for them. There's just one there that's still remaining. We're going to get up past this tree and show you this beautiful, incredible blush hydrangea. Kind of walking my way through the garden here. Incredible blush is much like incredible with its extra large, really huge blooms. The difference is they're pink, which is quite obvious. But beautiful, large pink blooms, sturdy plant, sturdy habit. Just a beautiful splash of color. It is a fairly big plant though. I mean, about 4 foot tall and 4 foot wide. So make sure that you have enough space in your garden for it. Tucked down here, we have some more mini mauvette. And you can see mini mauvette is a little bit more rosier or a little bit deeper, darker pink than the incredible blush. Also, they are a lot smaller. So they're only about 2 to 3 foot tall and 2 to 3 foot wide. So definitely a more compact specimen of the arborescent or smooth hydrangea. Here's another hardy hibiscus, and knock on wood, look at this. This one actually has pretty clean foliage. That's a good sight to see. Making our way up the hill. We're doing this kind of backwards today. I'm sure some of you have noticed. We've got the pugster butterfly bushes, not blooming yet, but they are full of buds. These were a little late to start this year, which is kind of crazy because everything was really early this year. But the pugsters, they were just taking their oh sweet time. The thing I like about the pugsters is they're only 2 foot tall by about 2 to 3 foot wide, but they have extra large, and I mean huge blooms once they start blooming. The bobo hydrangeas are set just ready to bloom. Look at all the buds. Another pugster, another bobo. So we kind of did a every other here as we planted going down the hill. You can kind of get a little glimpse between the house and the tree into the backyard garden. Quick Fire is also ready to bloom. This one usually blooms around the 4th of July. So this one I think is going to be just a little bit late this year. Lots of buds though. So it's always a beautiful sight. Making our way to the front of the house, you're welcomed with the Supertunia Vista Bubblegum Petunias. And Vista Bubblegum is definitely, to be honest, it's our top selling petunia. Supertunia Bubblegum outsells any petunia we carry by a lot. Although Vista Jazzberry really was a close second, although Bubblegum still really outsold everything. The nice thing I like about the Bubblegum is one plant can cover 3 foot of space. So by the end of the summer, you won't see rocks. They're going to be totally covered up with the beautiful flowers and foliage of the Bubblegum Supertunia. The key here is feeding them and watering them. So keeping them watered and feeding them once a week with your favorite water-soluble fertilizer. Ours is the Proven Winter fertilizer, and it just keeps that green and it keeps the flowers coming and looking gorgeous all summer long. Our aquapots are doing pretty good. They did take a beating with the rain, so that was a little bit sad to see when I came home from work today. But here's the new Salvia Unplugged White for 2025, and it is still looking very nice. There's pollinators enjoying it right now. The Nemesia, this is the Aromance Mulberry. The Saffron Finch, Supertunia. And then the Superbena Amethyst. That's looking really nice. I love that color combination there. This pot took the wind a little bit harder, and you can see that the salvia is kind of split a little bit. So we'll hopefully get that back and bounced up so that it's standing upright, so it continues to be the beautiful thriller that it was before the torrential rain. The Tiara Purple Supertunias are doing nice, planted with the Emerald Isle Alocasia. Look at that. I love that color. Beautiful, beautiful. And the Emerald Isle, super thick leaves. Really a very pretty thriller in this combination. A couple more plants to take a look at, and these are new varieties for 2025 as well. The Supertunia Tiara Pink, gorgeous. Really pretty with that purple, although I think it's actually called blue. And then the other plants in here that, again, here's where the wind kind of made it, kind of hurt it. But this is a favorite of mine, definitely a favorite. 2025, this will be seen a lot in my plantings. This is the Angelonia Angel Face Wedgwood Pink. Is that not beautiful? An excellent thriller for combinations for your full sun planters. That is going to be definitely something that is going on my have to have list for next year. Supertunias. How many of you are feeding your Supertunias once a week? If you're not, that's my challenge to you today. Feed your petunias and they will be fabulous. In fact, feed all of your annuals and they will be fabulous. They will thank you for doing it. And it's definitely the time of year where people's plants start looking a little tired and a little sad. And the biggest reason is because they are hungry. Get out and fertilize your plants today, and they will reward you with beautiful blooms through the summer. Thank you for taking a walk through the garden with me this evening. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you're new to our station, we welcome you to subscribe. You can head to our website, gardencrossings.com, and shop all your favorite annuals, perennials, and shrubs. Garden Crossings Garden Center has the largest selection of proven winter plants. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.